Welcome to Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy here on Pub Sports Radio. Thursday, November 11th. Ian Cameron with you. We're ready for another edition of the show breaking down CFL and NFL action from a betting perspective. Before we get to today's card, this is Remembrance Day in Canada, Veterans Day in the United States. I do want to take a moment to acknowledge and say thank you to all the men and women who serve armed forces, military, Navy, whatever the case may be. Anybody who serves their country on a day like today, it's important we remember them, we acknowledge them, and we give them our support and say thank you for all the sacrifices they make each and every day to make sure that we can live the lives that we get to enjoy every day and help ensure our freedoms each and every day as well. So, thank you very much to the men and women who serve their countries and those who have gone before us and have lost their lives in battle in the past or in serving their country. We say condolences, and we will remember you lest we forget. Important to acknowledge the great work that people around the world do to serve their country on a day like today. All right, let's go to some football now for week number 15. Can you believe that? It's week 15 now in the CFL. The season just continues to fly by extremely quickly. So let's get down to business here. It's like that Tiesto song. Let's get down to business. I've heard that song like a million times now. Stuck in my head, but nevertheless, let's get to the CFL to start, as we always do. We'll begin with two games on Friday night in the CFL with just 2 weeks of the regular season left. It's the Hamilton Tiger Cats taking on the Toronto Argonauts. We've got the Ticats, 1-point road favorites. Pick them in some spots, 45 the total. Now, keep in mind, there's not a lot of books that have CFL lines right now. I guess they're a little bit delayed here this week, but nevertheless, the Ticats, Argos, a pick 'em. I think the Ticats are going to win this game, and I'm not saying that as a homer. I'm saying that as seeing this team really start to get things going offensively. We are definitely seeing that the last few weeks, that the Ticats are definitely playing some of their best football on that side of the ball all season long. Jeremiah Masoli is looking comfortable again, leading this offense. The Ticats have scored 32, 39, and 26 points in their last 3 games. The offense is working. They won and covered all 3 of those games, and they have not lost a game since October 11th, Thanksgiving, at home. I was there against this Toronto Argonauts team, and it was a heartbreaking loss for the Ticats. They had a pretty comfortable lead going into the fourth quarter, and then the Argos ended up coming back and basically stealing a victory right out from under the Ticats, 24-23, the final score in favor of the Argos. I think the Ticats definitely intent on earning a little bit of payback for that loss on Thanksgiving, Canadian Thanksgiving, against the Argos. Meanwhile, Toronto, they've actually failed to cover in 3 straight games. They had the 37-16 road loss to Montreal. They beat BC in overtime, 31-29, but they were laying 3 in that game, so didn't cover the point spread there. And, of course, last week against Ottawa, they were very fortunate that Ottawa is as bad as they are, because Toronto was just awful, I thought, for most of that game. The offense couldn't get anything going early with McLeod, Bethel, Thompson, and they struggled to get past the Red Blacks. 10.5-point road favorites they were, and they didn't even come close to a point spread cover, as the Argos survived 23-20 over the Ottawa Red Blacks in that game. They're going to have to play a whole lot better here if they're going to beat Hamilton in this game. You look at it, the Argos offense has been all right. Has been up and down, though, really, since Bethel Thompson's been there. The one thing about the Argos, though, is they've trended over the total, 6-1 to the over their last 7 games. The Ticats have gone 3-1 to the over in their last 4 games. I think that trend can continue here. The totals are at a reasonable number here, 44.5, 45. I do like the over in this game, and I do like Hamilton to bounce back. Look, it's a situation where, the Ticats definitely have, I think, some advantages here in terms of the way they've gone. Toronto's passing game is more yards per pass, more yards per rush as well. And you're looking at a Toronto team that offensively is kind of taken a step back. And you look at Hamilton's defense; it's been one of the best defenses in the CFL all year. Toronto's is very good as well, but I think you're going to see some points in this particular game. Keep in mind the series history kind of points to that as well. We've seen most of the games between these two teams go over the total 8-2 to the over in the last 10 head-to-head meetings between the Argos and the Ticats. So I like Hamilton here to pick them. In a huge game in the East Division, of course, it's probably going to be one of these two teams winning the East Division. So if the Ticats want to catch Toronto for the East, they pretty much have to win this game. I think they've got a good chance to do that. Looking to avenge the loss they suffered to the Argos at home. So we'll go with the Ticats at Pick'em in this game. And I also like the over here, 44.5, 45. Calgary, BC, we've got Calgary 2.5-point road favorites, 45.5 the total in this one. I like Calgary here. As long as this line doesn't move too much and it stays with Calgary laying less than a field goal on the road, I think that's the side you look at. BC is done. They got officially eliminated last week at the hands of Hamilton in that 26-18 loss. This is a BC team that is struggling mightily right now on both sides of the ball. The offense has been very erratic. Michael Riley is being plagued by offensive line issues that have really hurt this offense. Now, the good news for BC is they've gotten most of their receiving core back, and it's a really good receiving core when it's fully healthy. And they might actually have Lamar Durant as well. They were without a couple of key other receivers the last few weeks, including Lucky Whitehead, who's just recently come back, and he's been one of BC's best receivers. So you're starting to see BC's offense play a little bit better the last couple of weeks. Since they got Lucky Whitehead back, they scored 29 against Toronto and then 18 against Hamilton, which not a great performance, but it was better than the 9, the 10, and the 0 points that BC scored in the 3 games before those last 2 against Toronto and Hamilton. So the offense is a little bit better, but the defense continues to struggle for BC. They have given up 26, 31, 45, 39, 30, 31 points in their last 6 games during this 0-6 straight up, 1-5 against the spread slide that they've been on that has effectively eliminated them from playoff contention. Meanwhile, Calgary, they've won 4 of their last 5 and covered 4 of their last 5. They beat down Ottawa 26-13 a couple of weeks ago. They're fresh and rested coming off a bye week, and there's still plenty at stake here for the Calgary Stampeders, because when you look at the CFL standings, there's still a good chance for the Stampeders to try to catch Saskatchewan. They could still do that. 6-6, they need to win out and hope Saskatchewan loses out, but there's still a pathway there for Calgary. So you got to think that coming into this game, they're looking at it as, hey, we want to win this game. We want to put our best foot forward and still play good football. And Bo Levi Mitchell's played better. The completion rate's gone up. He's not making as many mistakes. The defense has certainly played a lot better in recent games as well for the Calgary Stampeders. And really right now, they're just the much better football team than the BC Lions. And I think that's going to show here. So I like Calgary here, laying less than a field goal in this game on the road. All right, we turn to Saturday's CFL action. Winnipeg, Montreal. Winnipeg, 7.5-point road favorites, 44.5 the total. Zach Collaros being rested for this game. He will not start for Winnipeg. They will turn to Sean McGuire, the backup quarterback in this game for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And why not? You're playing the same team you beat last week, 31-21. You've already wrapped up the West Division first place. You have really nothing at stake here in these last 2 games. So, if you're Winnipeg, it's the smart move, I think, for Mike O'Shea, the head coach, to say, you know what, let's give Zach Collaros a break. Let's put Sean McGuire in there, make sure Collaros is healthy for the playoffs, because, look, he's been outstanding. Collaros has shown beyond the shadow of a doubt this year that when he's healthy, he can still be a premier quarterback in the CFL. He's had an outstanding year. The defense is the best defense in the CFL. You remember last week's show, I took Montreal against Winnipeg in Winnipeg at plus 12.5. They caught the point spread cover. It was close, but they lost only by 10 and got the money in that game. And I'm going to look to Montreal here. Again, the writing is on the wall. Winnipeg's not putting Zach Collaros on the field in this game. The game is really inconsequential for them. I think it's also a chance to evaluate some of their depth, get some second string, third string players on both sides of the football into the game. And for Montreal, these games are imperative for them. They are still trying to battle for positioning in the East Division, in the CFL standings. And when you look at the standings right now, Montreal 6-6, probably not going to catch Toronto for first place anymore, but they could still catch my Hamilton Tiger Cats. They're only one game behind Hamilton. And of course, if you finish second in the East, you at least get to host the East Division semifinal instead of going on the road to play that game. So there is still home field, at least in the semifinal round, division semifinal round of the playoffs at stake here for Montreal. If they want to maintain or keep alive any chances of that, they got to try to win this game here. So look, Winnipeg is the best team in the CFL. And maybe, they put in a couple backups here. They're good. Maybe they've got the depth, and I think they do. I'm reading things that Winnipeg does have a lot of good depth in their organization. That's why they're the best team in the CFL this year, and the defending Grey Cup champions. A good chance to repeat, if you ask me, the way they've played this year. But even with backups that they feel comfortable in, just that motivation and incentive, I'm not sure it's going to be there entirely for Winnipeg. And even last week against Montreal, they won by 10, but it took the Blue Bombers a lot of time in that game to finally warm up and get going. They were kind of stuck in mud early in that game. So I would look to Montreal here as a home underdog, 7.5. This game just means so much more to them than it does the road favorite, who have already wrapped up first in the West Division. And really at this point, they're just looking forward to the Grey Cup playoffs. All right, Edmonton, Saskatchewan. We've got Saskatchewan 10.5-point home favorites, 44 the total in this game. This one's a tough one because there's no way I want to back Edmonton. There's just no way that I'm looking to support this uh, Edmonton Elks team. It is a team that has just had a dismal year. They did cover last week against this Saskatchewan team through the back door, believe it or not. So that's the problem. Edmonton did show, that ability, to get through the back door. And the problem with Saskatchewan, if you're going to lay, 10.5 with them, is that they just have not been a win by a big margin type of football team. I mean, you look at Saskatchewan's last few wins, they beat BC by 7. They beat Calgary by 3. They beat Montreal by 5. And then last week, thanks to that late backdoor touchdown by Edmonton, they only won that game by 2, 19-17, against one of the worst teams in the CFL. So this is not a win by blowout margins type of team right now, Saskatchewan. They're a really good team. Cody Fajardo's been solid, does enough on offense. The defense is good, but it's not the kind of team we can truly count on week in and week out to win by double digits. They just haven't shown that ability for quite some time in terms of being able to beat a team by double digits. Could they? Yeah. Am I rushing to bet Edmonton? Absolutely not. There's also rumblings that Nick Arbuckle, who was acquired in a trade by the Edmonton Elks, might make his debut here and start at quarterback instead of Taylor Cornelius. So keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on the injuries, too, for Edmonton. James Wilder's been limited in practice this week, the running back. They've got injuries to Greg Ellingson, Mike Jones, Darrell Walker, cluster injuries at wide receiver. So we'll have to wait and see. And if they get some of those skill position players back, they were without a bunch of them last week in the game against Saskatchewan in Edmonton. And if they're without those players again here in Saskatchewan this time, it could be tough sledding. I guess I would lean under in this game. I mean, Edmonton's kind of trending that way. 3 of their last 4 games have gone under. They haven't scored more than 23 points in any of their last 4 games, and they've been held to 17 or less in 3 of those. Meanwhile, you look at Saskatchewan. They've gone under the total in 5 straight games. They haven't given up more than 17 points in their last 3 games, but they haven't scored more than 20 in their last 3 games either. So this game does set up, I think, to be a lower scoring game. I would lean under from a side perspective. And from a side perspective, believe it or not, I think Nick Arbuckle gives Edmonton a little bit better chance to compete than Taylor Cornelius. I think long term, Arbuckle is going to be a better quarterback here in the CFL than Taylor Cornelius. So if he does start, maybe Edmonton's got a chance to slide inside the number. They only lost by 2 at home last week to Saskatchewan with Cornelius at quarterback. And if they have Arbuckle, which I think is an upgrade at that position, then maybe Edmonton's the way you go, but I'm not going to take the points with Edmonton. I still don't trust them. Team that's really had a disappointing year and just playing out the string. But the under, I might get involved with that. All right, that's the CFL for Week 15. Let's turn our attention to the NFL. We start with Thursday Night Football. Baltimore Ravens, Miami Dolphins. Baltimore, 7.5-point road favorites, 46.5 the total in this game. I don't love the idea of laying 7.5 on the road with a Baltimore team that has had a little bit of trouble winning by margin, in a lot of games lately. They've won a lot of close games recently. But at the same time, do I want to take Miami, especially if it's going to be Jacoby Brissett at quarterback? Not really. Against a Baltimore defense that, look, at times has given up. Like last week, they didn't play great against Minnesota, but Miami's offense kind of pales in comparison. I don't have a strong opinion on this game. From a player prop standpoint, I do like Mark Andrews, the tight end for the Baltimore Ravens. Miami is the fourth worst team in the NFL in terms of defending the tight end. So, and we know how often Lamar Jackson looks for Mark Andrews in the passing game. So this could be a game where Mark Andrews does have a very solid game for the Baltimore Ravens, and I would maybe look in that direction for over receiving yards, over receptions, certainly to score a touchdown. Mark Andrews probably a good option here for the Baltimore Ravens. So not really much on the side or total. I'd lean to Baltimore. I'd lean to the over at the current numbers. If your book gives you the opportunity, and most of these sports books, you should be able to do this. I'm not a big same game teaser person where you can bet the side and total of the same game on a teaser. This game fits, though. I think a good opportunity to use that same game, 2-team, 6-point teaser. You could tease Baltimore from -7.5 down to -1.5 because I do think they're going to win this game. And you can get the over down from 46.5 to 40.5. So you could go Baltimore -1.5 and over 40.5 on a 6-point teaser, same game side and total, 2-team 6-point teaser. I have bet that. I think that's a good bet because I think we can at least get to 41. I could see this being, 24-17, something like that in favor of Baltimore, maybe 27-20, something like that. And we end up getting over the total at least for the teaser, and Baltimore wins the game. I just don't know if they're going to win by more than a touchdown. Like I think Baltimore is going to win the game, but I feel more comfortable looking at Baltimore here on a 2-team 6-point same game teaser. So that's the way I would probably go about betting the Ravens and the Dolphins. But overall, it's not a game that I don't have the strongest opinion on overall. That would just be a small bet for me, that teaser. I do have a lot of opinions on the Sunday card this week in the NFL. I think this is one of the better cards in the NFL in quite some time. I think there's some good opportunities. So let's get right into it. Jacksonville, Indianapolis. We've got the Colts, 10.5-point home favorites, 47.5 the total in this game. Do you trust a team that's just not very good to withstand prosperity after, just an enormous upset like the Jacksonville Jaguars had last week? I'm not so sure. Jacksonville, obviously, an incredible win last week. What were they? 2-touchdown underdogs, more than that, against Buffalo, and they end up getting the upset. And look, their defense just blew up the line of scrimmage. That's what impressed me about that win. Jacksonville's defensive line just owned Buffalo in the trenches for that entire game. The Josh Allen that nobody talks about half as much dominated the other Josh Allen, the one that everybody knows about. That's the way that game went for the Buffalo Bills last week. But give Jacksonville credit. Their defense was great. Their offense still stunk. So it wasn't all good for the Jaguars, but they got the 9-6 win over the Bills last week. Now they got to go on the road, face Indy, who, Indy's not one of those teams I typically like to lay doubles with. But you look at the last 2 times they've been double-digit favorites, and both of them at home, just like they are here. Houston, 31-3 as 11.5-point home favorites. And then the Jets last Thursday night, 45-30 as 10-point home favorites. And keep in mind, that game was, I think, 42-10 at one point in favor of the Colts. So that's a misleading final score. The Colts really took their foot off the gas pedal late in that game. I would only look to lay in the points here with Indy. In fact, I might lay the points here with Indianapolis. This is typically not the kind of team I want to do that, but look, their offense is working right now. Carson Wentz has perfected this, chuck the ball down the field, receiver comes to a stop, draws pass interference. Like, they've got this thing working, the Colts. It's amazing how many of their big plays have come from that kind of situation. But No, I mean, other than that, he's still making the odd mistake and bad throw and bad decision. But more often than not, you're seeing a lot of good things too from Carson Wentz. He's moving the team. They're running the ball well the last 3 games as well, which is good to see. They're averaging, 6 yards per rush, 160 yards per game on the ground, this Colts team. So, Carson Wentz is doing better. 64% completions the last 6 games. Jonathan Taylor has been very strong running the football. He's averaging 7.4 yards per carry in the last 4 games for the Colts offense. So they got the balance they've been looking for. T.Y. Hilton, who actually they did not have last week against the Jets. There's a good chance he comes back from concussion protocol, so keep your eye on that. We do have a couple key injuries on defense, including, of course, Darius Leonard, who's one of the captains, the leaders on that defense, ankle injury. He's questionable for Sunday, but I still would look toward Indianapolis here, minus 10.5, and lean to the over as well. Cleveland and New England. We've got New England 2.5-point home favorites, 45.5 the total in this game. Great game here. 5-4 teams, 2 teams trying to strengthen their chances of getting into the playoffs. I lean Cleveland here. It bothers me, obviously, about the Nick Chubb situation. He's got on the COVID list now for this Cleveland team and won't play in this game. And they still have some key injuries. The offensive line, what else is new? J.C. Treader, the center, knee injury, questionable. Jack Conklin, the right tackle, out indefinitely. So you worry again that this team's still battling a lot of injuries. Jarvis Landry does look like he's going to play, though, for the Browns in this game, which is good. What I saw from Cleveland made me think, because, look, I lost with Cincy last week, and it was obviously a dead wrong side. But what I saw from Cleveland last week was a team that says, you know what? It's November. We're down to the last 2 months of the regular season. Let's go on a run, folks. Let's go on a run, boys. And I think we saw evidence of that in that win against Cincinnati. They got rid of the deadwood, the guy that was causing a fuss in the locker room, bad vibes, bad karma, whatever. But they got rid of it. They saw he was a problem. Odell Beckham Jr., they got rid of it. And you saw the way they played in that first game after parting ways with OBJ against Cincinnati. 41-16, that was as dominant on both sides of the football as I've seen Cleveland look all season long. And that tells me that maybe we've got a buy sign. That tells me maybe we've got this team looking like a bet-on team here down the stretch. Unfortunately, New England's looking like a bet-on team too. I mean, 3-0 straight up, 3-0 against the spread their last 3 games. Jets, Chargers, and Panthers. Mac Jones is doing well enough on offense, and the defense has really played well for extended stretches in the last 3 games. So 2 kind of bet-on teams, but with Cleveland being the underdog here, I lean to them. And there's evidence that after the Chubb news, and look, it's obviously a huge loss for the Cleveland Browns not having Nick Chubb here, who's now on the COVID-19 list. So, yeah, and you worry about the running back position, because Dearness Johnson, as of right now, he's really the only healthy running back I believe they've got going into this game. So that is concerning. There's no question. Who is going to step up? Who's going to fill the void? That's going to end up being a legitimate question here going into this game for the Cleveland Browns. They're just decimated right now at running back with obviously Kareem Hunt's on IR. You've got Chubb, you've got Kelly, you've got Demetric Felton on the COVID list. So you've got Dearness Johnson and nothing much after that. So we're going to have to see how this sets up. You got to think the Browns got to bring in another running back from somewhere. Where that's going to be is the question. But so I lean Cleveland, but definitely the Chubb news is a bummer. It's giving me pause there, but I would still probably take the 2.5 with Cleveland before taking New England. But I'm not in a rush to bet against the Patriots either. Atlanta, Dallas. We've got Dallas 9.5-point home favorites here, 55 the total in this game. I already bet the over early in the week. I still like the over at the current number, 54.5, 55 in this game. It opened 50.5. I think I got it when it was 52. And I still like it at the current number. This has shootout written all over it. I'm not worried about Dallas's offense. Dak Prescott's fine. It was just one of those games. Dallas had a flat, lethargic performance against an out-of-conference team. It was not totally unexpected because I took Denver last week, plus the points. And I didn't expect them to lose 30-16, but I did expect, after the Minnesota game, which was down to the wire, winning with Cooper Rush, who filled in for Dak in that game, and the overtime game against New England, divisional game against the Giants. Like, they played a divisional game in New England and Minnesota, which were down to the wire games, and it just felt like they were going to maybe hit a wall, and they sure did against Denver last week. And the offense and Dak Prescott had their worst game of the year. They'll get well here because I don't know if Atlanta's forcing any punts in this game. I still don't think much of this Atlanta defense. I know they played all right against Carolina, and I know they beat New Orleans last week and played well for most of that game. But who's kidding who? That New Orleans offense is very, very sketchy right now with Taysom Hill and Trevor Siemian as your quarterbacks. So I'm not willing to give Atlanta too much credit for how well they played defensively last week. I think they're going to get torched here. If Dallas doesn't score 35 plus or 40 in this game, I'd be surprised. And on the flip side, though, I think Matt Ryan and the Falcons offense can put points up as well. So I think they can contribute to this over as well. So I like the over in this game, even at the current number, 54.5. I think we get 31-28 or, 30, or I think we get something like 38-21, 42-17, 42-21, something like that. It's a lot of points. It's a lot of points to lay with Dallas here, but I don't know if I'd want to take Atlanta. It feels like a potential kill spot for the Cowboys after that debacle against Denver last week. Now, you are still laying 9.5 points with a Dallas defense that, yeah, it's definitely better than it was last year, but it's still not a shutdown, lock you down defense by any stretch of the imagination. So, but I lean Dallas from a side perspective. As long as it stays below 10, I would only lay the points, but I like the over more than that in this game. Buffalo, New York Jets. Buffalo, 12-point road favorites, 48 the total. Buffalo has 5 wins this year, and all 5 wins have been by more than 2 touchdowns. So when Buffalo wins, they win big. I think they're going to win big here. I mean, they are a thoroughly pissed off team after the loss to Jacksonville. Practice apparently this week has been as serious as it's been all year. They want they want redemption for just that awful, brutal loss last week to the Jacksonville Giants. It's really unacceptable for the Buffalo Bills to not score a touchdown in that game against Jacksonville. But that's where we were at. I mean, the offensive line was horrendous in that game. I can't even say it enough how bad the Bills' offensive line was. It was offensive how bad the Bills' offensive line was. But I do think they'll bounce back. Now, Mike White's going to play at quarterback for the Jets here in this game. And look, he had an amazing game against Cincinnati. He actually played quite well in the Colts game before he got injured last week. He's played well. And it wouldn't shock me to see him put up points. So I think the game could go over the total. I've been riding New York Jet games over the total for a few games now. They've cashed each and every time. Robert Saleh does not have a defense. He's supposed to be this defensive mastermind, but we've not seen it show up on the football field yet for his New York Jets team this year. So I think this game can go over the total. I think it's a bounce back for Josh Allen. This is still a great Bills offense. They had a horrible game, embarrassing game last week, but they're still a good offense, and I expect them to bounce back strong here against a horrendous Jets defense. And I will lay the points as well, -12. I mean, I think Buffalo bounces back, and if you think they're going to win the game, well, you have evidence that every win this year has been by more than 2 touchdowns for Buffalo, including the win against Kansas City. They won that game by 18. So when they win games this year, they've won by margin, and I think they've got a good chance to win by a big margin here. So I think it's the bounce-back Bills this Sunday against the New York Jets. All right, the New Orleans Saints and the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee 3-point home favorites, 44.5 the total in this game. I like New Orleans here. I just don't it's not easy to fade Tennessee right now. They're playing great football. What they did last week against the Rams was extremely impressive. No Derrick Henry, no problem. All they did was go into L.A., take care of business against the L.A. Rams in that game. Extremely impressive by the Titans. But how many more times could you physically, mentally, and emotionally rise up and play a big game? Because they've had a bunch of them lately, Tennessee. The Buffalo game, Kansas City game, the Indy game, which went to overtime, the Rams last week on the West Coast, 2 road games, and now you're traveling back home from the West Coast here. This is the spot where I think the Titans maybe hit a mental physical wall. It very well could happen here. And look, if it doesn't happen, they could easily win and cover because they're playing that well right now in this game. But let's not forget, they were outgained by the Rams. Let's not forget Matthew Stafford kind of gifted the Titans some points in that game, including just that awful, interception out of the end zone. And then, of course, the other pick six that he threw in that game. So, kind of gift wrapped 14 points right there for the Tennessee Titans last Sunday night, did Matthew Stafford. Tannehill was still, kind of lackluster throwing the ball, 143 yards through the air. And it's not like the ground game worked for Tennessee um, without Derrick Henry last week against the Rams. 26 rushing attempts and just 69 rushing yards in that game. They didn't even crack 3 yards per carry last week running the football without Derrick Henry against the LA Rams. So that concerns me here because New Orleans does have a pretty solid defense and a team that's looking to bounce back after a loss to the Atlanta Falcons last week, 27-25. They couldn't follow up that big win against Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers the week before that. But I think the Saints probably have a better game in them. We've seen evidence this year. New Orleans been pretty good in a bounce back spot. Look at their results this year. They lost to Carolina. They had that awful game. They bounced back and won at New England the next week. They lost in overtime to the Giants at home. They bounced back the next week and beat Washington 33-22. So at won and covered 2-0 straight up and ATS off a loss this year. I like the Saints here, getting 3 on the road as underdogs. I think their defense, because even though Tennessee beat the Rams, there are some warning signs there that without Derrick Henry, they weren't able to run the ball. And New Orleans, I think, could really make things challenging here for the Tennessee defense, considering the Saints this year. You look at it, they're only giving up 73 rushing yards per game, 3.2 yards per carry. I don't think Tennessee's going to have much success running the football here. And again, you force Ryan Tannehill to be one-dimensional. Those are the chances you have to beat Tennessee. So I like New Orleans here, +3 in this game against the Titans. All right, Tampa Bay, Washington. Tampa Bay, 9.5-point road favorites, 51 the total. I would lean to the Bucs here. It'll be a smaller bet, not one of my stronger opinions, but come on, it's Tom Brady off a bye and a loss. Remember, Bucs haven't played since that loss to the New Orleans Saints a couple weeks ago. Brady threw multiple interceptions, including a pick six, which sealed the game for the New Orleans Saints. I'd expect them to be ready to bounce back strong here off the bye week here against Washington, and Washington defense that's been terrible all year. Something's got to give here because the Bucs are 0-4 against the spread on the road. The Washington football team, they're 0-4 against the spread at home this year. So something's got to give here in this matchup between these two teams. But, Washington's just in a bad way right now. And Washington's off a bye too. So we should point that out. So it's a level playing field in terms of the scheduling spot for these two teams. But you look at Washington's last 4 games, they lose by 11 to New Orleans, by 18 to Kansas City. They lose by 2 touchdowns to Green Bay, by 7 to Denver. They're just having a tough time winning games, and 3 of those 4 losses by double digits. In fact, all of or actually, it looks like 4 of the losses this year for the Washington football team have been by more than a touchdown. So I would expect this one to be a situation where Washington's going to be in tough here, even at home. I would lean a little bit to Tampa Bay here. Again, it's a high number, and they haven't covered a number on the road yet this year, the Bucs. But I definitely have to favor it's Tom Brady and this Bucs team off a bye, and they lost the game previously before the bye. I think you're going to see them play better here. Tampa Bay -9 if I'm betting that game. Detroit and Pittsburgh. We've got Pittsburgh 8.5, 9-point home favorites at Heinz Field. 43 the total in this game. I like Detroit here. I know they're winless. I know they got absolutely embarrassed at home by Philadelphia, but they were coming off the Goff-Stafford revenge bowl, if you will, where the Lions really played their asses off against the Rams and took the Rams right down to the wire just about. And then they fell flat. They just had nothing in the tank against Philadelphia. But now they're off a bye week, and now the urgency is mounting for this team. Nobody wants that 0-17 on their resume beside their name. They want to make sure they win a football game. I think you're going to see Detroit still play hard. They don't want to be a winless team. They don't want to be a footnote in history. They want to win a football game, and I don't know if they're going to win here, but this is not at all a good scheduling situation for Pittsburgh. Not by any stretch of the imagination. They're coming off Monday Night Football against Chicago, where they barely escaped 29-27. And this is not a team that's winning games by big margins. You look at this year, they have not won a game by more than 8 points. The win against Buffalo by 7, win against Denver by 8, 3-point win in overtime against Seattle, 5-point win at Cleveland, 2-point win against Chicago. Where is the win by margin for Pittsburgh? And they're also, this year, when playing on their home field as favorites, here in Pittsburgh, the Steelers are 0-4 against the spread. They have not covered as home favorites this year. So you got Detroit rested off a bye. Jared Goff is capable enough. Now he's facing a Pittsburgh defense that's pretty good. It is definitely the strength of the Steelers team this year. But I think you have Jared Goff with a little bit of extra time to prepare here. You got Detroit now rested. I think a lot of urgency setting in. I'm reading a lot of stuff that winning a game matters. This team does not want to finish 0-17. And I think you're going to get a good effort and a revitalized effort from the Detroit Lions following that bye week. So I like Detroit here. +9. There haven't been many games where I say I definitely like the Lions. I actually definitely like the Lions here. I really think this is a down-to-the-wire game, and they're going to put a scare in the Pittsburgh Steelers here in this game coming out of the bye week. Minnesota Vikings, LA Chargers. Chargers 3-point home favorites, 53 the total. I like the over in this game. The total's already gone up. Vikings can't stop anybody. The defense is ravaged. The injuries are piling up at an alarming rate on the defensive side of the football for the Minnesota Vikings. That's bad news against Justin Herbert and a very explosive offense. I think they're in trouble here. They're going to give up big plays and points, just like they did last week against Baltimore. And by the way, in that loss in overtime where the Vikings had a double-digit lead, couldn't hang on, they lose in overtime to Baltimore, just a gut punch of a loss for Minnesota. They were on the field, the Minnesota defense, for 90 plays, 90 in that game. So they're a fatigued, tired, worn-down defense. You could tell at the end of the game they were exhausted. And now they got to take a West Coast flight out to L.A. this week and play the Chargers with a defense that was on the field a ton last week. This just has a game where the Chargers should be able to move the football with a ton of success. Chargers team total over 27.5. You could even go with that as well as the full game over. But the Chargers defense, the more I watch the Chargers defense, the less I'm impressed. They couldn't stop the Eagles in the second half. They're very fortunate that in their final game-winning field goal drive, they drained the clock and didn't give the Eagles any time, because I'm sure if the Eagles got the ball back after the Chargers made it 27-24, the Eagles probably would have scored, because the Chargers weren't stopping the Eagles. And their defense is a worry right now. They've given up 42, 34, 27, and 24 in their last 4 games. That's not very good. I mentioned, of course, the injuries on the defensive side for the Vikings. I mean, it is a rough injury report. It really is. You're talking about James Lynch, the defensive tackle, Eric Kendricks, the great linebacker, Anthony Barr, another great key linebacker for them. Michael Pierce, Bashaud Breeland, Hunter Harrison Smith, the safety. It is just Daniil Hunter. It is a ravaged defense right now. And I think we're going to see a shootout here between these two teams. So total's gone up. I agree. I like the over, and I lean to the Chargers. It's going to be your typical, probably close game. It's what the Chargers do. They play down to the wire, tight, close football games. But I don't want Minnesota in this game. It would be the Chargers minus the 3 for me. Carolina, Arizona. We've got Arizona 10-point home favorites, 44 the total in this game. I don't know. This just doesn't feel or look or smell like the right spot to be laying 10 with Arizona. And look, credit to them. With no DeAndre Hopkins, no Kyler Murray last week, and Colt McCoy was phenomenal. Colt McCoy moved the ball up and down the field. He shredded that 49ers secondary, which I think is more of an indictment on San Francisco's defense right now, even more than a positive remark about how well Arizona's offense played. But nevertheless, give Arizona credit. No excuses. They were coming off their first loss of the year against Green Bay on the Thursday night game. And boy, they bounced back in a very impressive manner against San Francisco. We'll see if they can keep rolling here back home against Carolina. It's going to be P.J. Walker time for the Carolina Panthers. Of course, Sam Darnold placed on injured reserve. At this point, it can't hurt. It could only maybe be an upgrade, believe it or not, for the Carolina Panthers, because he was really struggling the last few games, Sam Darnold. Look, Arizona is still very much a banged up team. I mean, we don't even know yet for sure if Kyler Murray's going to be back for the Arizona Cardinals here in this game. He's questionable. Same with DeAndre Hopkins. Same with Rondale Moore. And look, let me just see if they practiced yesterday. Hopkins didn't. Kyler Murray is making practice. Apparently, he didn't practice, but he's making progress with the ankle sprain. So they think Murray's going to play. It looks like Murray is on track, barring a setback, to play on Sunday. And DeAndre Hopkins is a little bit more on the questionable side. But this is just difficult for me because I've been pro Arizona all year. This team is one win away from already cashing my over-season win total, 8.5 on the Arizona Cardinals. They've put a lot of money in my pocket. I've backed them a lot this year. I just don't know if this is the spot to do it. They're laying 10. It feels like it's a bit of a flat spot, go through the motions type of game for Arizona, especially with Seattle next week on deck. No, I don't want to lay 10 with Arizona this week. I don't know if I could back Carolina either with PJ Walker. Maybe the under here. Carolina's gone under in 3 straight. I know they put up 31 last week against San Francisco, but I think this game could be an under. 45.5 total down to 44 now. So lean under, not much on the side. I don't think I could back either team at this number. Seattle and Green Bay. We got Green Bay 3.5 point home favorites, 49.5 the total in this game. Money's come in on Seattle. I agree. Seattle is still alive. I know they're 3-5, but they're only one game out of the wild card, which is being held by Atlanta, the final wild card at 4-4. And the talk with Seattle is we want to make a run. And now they're going to get Russell Wilson back from injury. And Green Bay is, obviously they gutted out a win against Kansas City. Or no, actually they lost, I should say, to Kansas City last week without Aaron Rodgers. It was a rough game for Jordan Love yet last week against the Chiefs. Didn't play well, 13-7. The defense did play well, though, and Green Bay has now covered every single game, 8-0 against the spread since that season-opening debacle against the New Orleans Saints. So give the Packers credit for that. They have been a good point spread team. So is Seattle, though. Seattle has covered 4 of their last 5 going into this game. I was impressed with, and they're off a bye as well. And Pete Carroll, long-term, his numbers off a bye are good. Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson with Seattle, their numbers as an underdog, ATS, are very strong. And I was impressed with Seattle in their performance before the bye. It was a loss against New Orleans on Monday Night Football, October 25th. It could have ended their season. It could have sent them in the tank. But they came back less than a week later, that Sunday, and they put the boots to the Jacksonville Jaguars, dominated them. And that was with Geno Smith at quarterback for Seattle in that game. So that was a sign that, hey, the Seahawks aren't punting, no pun intended, on the season. And why should they? They're now just a game back of a wild card spot. So I expect focus. I expect a good performance, a rested team off a bye week. I agree with the money move towards Seattle. If it gets down to 3 and you can no longer get it at 3, better than 3, maybe you back off a little bit. But when this number opened, Green Bay -5, I understand why the betting markets were betting this thing down throughout the course of the week. And with Russell Wilson coming back, I would lean Seattle still, even after the line move. Philadelphia, Denver 2.5 point home favorites, 45.5 the total in this game. I don't trust Philly. I do not trust Philadelphia. Jalen Hurts played well last week. The offense did, but the defense couldn't stop the Chargers. And the defense has been an issue for the Eagles in 3 of their last 4 games. They couldn't stop Tom Brady and the Bucs. They couldn't stop Derek Carr and the Raiders. They couldn't stop Justin Herbert and the Chargers last week. The only game that they won during that stretch was Detroit. And Detroit was off the ultimate, sleepwalk, lethargic, letdown spot after the Rams game with Goff versus Stafford. So that's the only win for Philly. Denver is another one of those teams now. Back-to-back wins and covers. They beat Washington at home. They beat up Dallas, winning outright as 10.5 point underdogs last week against the Cowboys. This is now kind of like what we said with Seattle in the last game. Denver has new life again. Very much so. They're 5-4. They're still very much alive for first place in the very competitive AFC West division. Everybody is neck and neck. Everybody has 5 wins right now in that AFC West division. So Denver is alive, very much so, for not only the division, but obviously a wild card spot in the AFC too. So becomes a very big game for the Denver Broncos and for the Philadelphia Eagles. 3-6, because the NFC is kind of watered down this year. They're still in the mix, but they're not playing the football that I want to rely on and count on going into this game on the road in Denver. Just, look, Denver's lost a couple home games this year, but it's still not the easiest place to go to and the easiest place to win. Teddy Bridgewater and the offense is starting to click, which is good to see. And it really started with getting Jerry Jeudy back from injury at receiver. Other guys have stepped up, including Tim Patrick, among others, for the Denver Broncos at receiver, although Patrick's questionable. Cortland Sutton's been good. Noah Fant's solid at the tight end spot. The Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams combination at running back has been doing a decent job for the Broncos as well. I like Denver here as long as it stays below a field goal and you don't have to lay more than that. Just asking the Broncos to win the game straight up against Philadelphia here at home. I think they can get the job done here. All right, Sunday night football: Kansas City Chiefs, Las Vegas Raiders. Chiefs 2.5 3-point road favorites, 52 the total. So here's the dilemma. We're talking about a Chiefs team that what are they now? 3-19-1 against the spread. That's the run for the Kansas City Chiefs. They've been just a money burner. They failed to cover again last week against Green Bay, despite the fact the Packers didn't do anything on offense with Jordan Love, and they still couldn't cover in that game. Yeah, the Kansas City defense was better in that game, but how much of it was just the Packers' offense? So to say, Jordan Love barely got on the practice field with Devontae Adams in that offense before that game started. That definitely had a negative impact on their execution and their ability to perform last week. So I don't want to give Kansas City some chatter that's going on. I'm seeing on Twitter and on television about what a turnaround that was for Kansas City's defense. Could we stop with that? I mean, they played Jordan Love. He barely practiced with the Green Bay offense last week. We're going to make a big deal of that and talk about it like it was some big defensive breakthrough or turnaround for the Chiefs. They saw the light or something like that. No, they got to show it to me here. I'm not sold that the Chiefs defense is back on track yet because of that. No way. Show it to me here against the Las Vegas Raiders. I want to take Las Vegas here because I don't trust Kansas City. And I think Las Vegas back home after a frustrating loss to the Giants is just what the doctor ordered. But where is their headspace? Where is it right now? They've had so much to deal with. The John Gruden email nonsense that sent him out the door. The Henry Ruggs tragic incident. And clearly it affected them a little bit last week because they made some mistakes and, they actually moved the ball, but just too many mistakes. They lose to the Giants. I think they'll be better here. I think being back home is going to help this Las Vegas Raiders team. Maybe they can park the distractions behind them here. And if they can, they've shown head-to-head against Las Vegas, or against Kansas City, they can compete with this team, especially last year. Las Vegas won in Kansas City 40-32. And then here in Las Vegas, it took a Patrick Mahomes Kansas City touchdown drive with like a minute to go to steal the win, 35-31. So Las Vegas was a tough out for Kansas City last year, and now you can make the argument Las Vegas is better this year, and maybe Kansas City not quite as good this year as they were last year. So I like the Raiders here. I'm probably going to bet it. I don't know how strong it's going to be, but especially with still a couple of +3s sitting out there with the Raiders in this game, I'm going to side with them. Again, I think this team has the mental capacity to get past that loss last week against the Giants. It's been now a week or two, or week and a half now. They've had some time to heal. They've had some time to, think about everything that's gone on. And I think maybe this is the game, especially a divisional home game, big game in the division, Sunday night football at home. I think this is the opportunity for Las Vegas to have a bounce back game on both sides of the ball. I think their defense will play better. And look, Patrick Mahomes and the offense, they're still having issues, turnovers. Red zone efficiency has been terrible 2 straight games for Kansas City. They're settling for field goals in the red zone too much. That's not a good thing. So I definitely lean Raiders on Sunday Night Football. We wrap it up with Monday Night Football. LA Rams, San Francisco 49ers. Rams 4-point road favorites, 49 the total in this game. The money's come in on the Rams, and some of that money is mine because I've already bet the Rams in this game. I got them at -4 early in the week. I like the Rams here. I'm actually a little bit surprised this line has stayed as short as it is. You've got the Rams in the ultimate bounce back spot after a pretty poor performance on Sunday night against Tennessee. And you look at the Rams this year, their one loss against Arizona, and then they bounced back and beat Seattle, won and covered the next week. I think Matthew Stafford and the Rams offense will be a lot better. The defense as well will step things up for this Rams team against a 49ers offense that's totally out of sorts. They got George Kittle back against Arizona. It didn't help. They made mistakes. Jimmy Garoppolo was mediocre at best. And then defense has fallen apart for San Francisco. They've now given up a grand total of 83 points in the last 3 games. So that's an average of um, it's pretty ugly. That's an average of almost 28 points per game over their last 3 games. They're 1-3 straight up, and they're on a brutal 1-5 ATS slide. San Francisco in their last 6 games. They're just trending in the wrong direction. They don't know what they want to do at quarterback. They've got now McGlinchey and a couple of key offensive linemen are banged up. The defense can't get any stops right now, and now they got to face a very, very focused, I think, motivated, angry Rams team. Yeah, I like the Rams here, -4 on Monday Night Football against the San Francisco 49ers in this game to get the job done here in this one. And by the way, I think the Rams lost both games to San Francisco last year. So it's important to keep that in mind. So San Francisco's played well against the Rams. They've actually won 4 straight head-to-head. Shanahan's actually gotten the better of McVay, but I don't think that's going to happen this time around. A totally different situation, a much better Rams team this year compared to those Jared Goff Rams teams. Although Matt Stafford, we got to call it like we see it. He's had a great year. He played a lot like Jared Goff last week in that game against Tennessee. I mean, just terrible decisions, awful decision making with the football, what we don't expect to see from Matthew Stafford. But it's really the first time he's been that bad all year, like a truly bad game for Matthew Stafford. That was really the first one he's had all year. I think he'll be a lot better here Monday Night Football against the San Francisco 49ers. So I would only look at the road favorite in that game. All right, there's your CFL and NFL card for this weekend right here on Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy on Pub Sports Radio. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. Hit the like button. Make sure you do that if you haven't already. We will get to a CFL and NFL best bet to wrap up the show in just a second. But first, messages from Manscaped and Southtown 101. All right, Southtown 101. When you're in San Antonio, Texas, stop in. Great food, drinks, live music, DJs, and karaoke. Southtown 101. Manscaped promo code PubSports. 20% off your purchase of the Lawnmower 4.0 or any Manscaped product. Get 20% off using promo code PubSports. And MyBookie.ag, promo code PubSports. Great time of year. NFL, college football, NBA, college basketball, NHL, CFL. Go on down the list. All the sports at once. Great month. Busy month, but a great month for a sports bettor. November. Sign up for an account at mybookie.ag. Bitcoin accepted currency for your deposit as well. Mybookie.ag, promo code PubSports. All right, let's get to it. Let's give you a best bets in the CFL and NFL to wrap up the show. For CFL for this week, for best bet, let's go to the same team I used last week. Montreal Alouettes +7.5 against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Again, Winnipeg going to their backup quarterback. They've locked up everything, first place in the division. They're just looking to get to the playoffs. and keep everybody healthy. Montreal, this game means a lot. I think they lost by 10 in Winnipeg last week, and I thought they were very competitive in that game for most of it. And now they're back home against Winnipeg this week, facing a backup quarterback. I think you're going to see Trevor Harris and the Alouettes offense do enough on to move the ball and put up points, while the defense, I think, can at least keep in check a quarterback and making his first start of the year for the Bombers. So Montreal plus 7.5 against Winnipeg for my CFL best bet. My NFL best bet for this Sunday, man, a lot of good choices, a lot of good options across the board. Let's see. Let's do Monday Night Football. Let's do the LA Rams. Actually, -3.5 you can get at DraftKings. Let's go with that. A little Monday Night Football. LA Rams -3.5 against San Francisco. Bounce back time for Matthew Stafford and the Rams against a 49ers team that is just totally out of sorts. That was about as low as it gets. A banged up Arizona team last week, backup quarterback, and you get buried. You lose by 2 touchdowns in that game. Bounce back time for the Rams. I think they get it done. LA Rams. And finally, McVay gets the better of Shanahan in this matchup. LA Rams -4 against San Francisco for my NFL best bet. And that'll wrap up this edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy right here on Pub Sports Radio. Make sure you join me later today. NBA Pub Hub, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, right here on Pub Sports Radio with me, Dutch, Billy, and Wham, the crew, breaking down the NBA card. Connor Mack and Maxwell Smart with the Net Profit College Basketball Show as well this afternoon, 5 p.m. Eastern. Make sure you tune into that as well. Thanks for watching. I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great weekend. Enjoy all the football action. Enjoy the games, and good luck. Cash some tickets on the gridiron, and I'll be back and with you next Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, for another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy right here on Pub Sports Radio.